39 weeks pregnant on Monday. Still no appearance of baby saw this. Anyway, welcome back to Rock of the Week. This week's rock can come in many different colours, including black, dark grey, beige, light brown, whatever you want to call it, light grey, red, pink. Aye. So this week's rock of the week is Siltstone. And Siltstone's a sedimentary rock. We've spoke about one sedimentary rock before, which was mudstone. So this is the next in the kind of sequence of grain sizes, right? Siltstone. Silt is basically a silt-sized particle. It's like between 0.0002 millimetres to 0.0063 millimetres, right? I think I got that right. It's very small, very difficult to see with the naked eye, but it's a tiny little bit bigger than clay. Tiny little bit bigger than clay minerals. So your siltstone is very, very similar to mudstone. Forms in kind of low energy environments like mudstone as well, right? So you do get it sometimes interbedded, layer upon layer upon layer with mudstone and siltstone all together, right? But we have to kind of go through that process again. So how do you get sedimentary rocks? Well, when you look at the rock cycle, it all starts in the mountains. Yes, the mountains, where you have the transportation, you have the weathering and erosion of those mountains, right? That can be done by wind, water, ice, all your natural processes that kind of get in there, weather away at the rocks, like erode away, chemical weather away at them. And then you've got grains that kind of come down from the mountains and are transported. That's the next section of a sedimentary rock formation, right? Or the next step. It gets transported down from the mountains, right? We're going to try draw this because I like to draw things. Look at my wee faults, man. They look class, don't they? We'll go into faults another time. That was a perfect drawing. Took me half an hour though. So, rock cycle starts up in the mountains. Right. Probably put a wee diagram in here too. So you've got your mountains, blah, 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 and then it kind of comes down and then goes into the sea, right? That's probably not the best drawing. We need to do that again. I'm not very good. I'm not very good at this. Right, mountains. And then kind of comes down and then into the sea, right? Well, maybe not as steep. Right, okay. And then we've got things on the way there. So, you've obviously got, rain falling on this, snow falling on it, glaciers, ice, etc. Kind of weathers away all these particles. You might have uplift and stuff like that as well happening at the time. But what happens is this is transported down and carried down either by, rivers or whatever. Down in streams, rivers, all sorts, like from the mountains, okay? And as it's carried down in certain environments, we get obviously certain types of rocks that form. Now, as I said before, siltstone and mudstone form in very low energy environments where it's quite calm, because it's usually suspended out. When you have fast flowing rivers and fast flowing, currents, oceanic currents and stuff, they're going to be, and fast flowing winds as well. You can get wind that carries silt particles and then drops it elsewhere, right? And that would be in desert environments. So you get a variety of different environments that siltstone forms in. So basically what happens is it gets transported down, that's the next step, by wind, water, ice. Mainly water, and sometimes wind, because it can lift up the particles and blow them about. And then it gets kind of dumped in low energy environments. So when that river kind of stops, there's not a lot of water, it's maybe a drier season, you tend to get silt particles kind of starting to what's the word for it? Settle to the bottom. And then it might get picked up again, or it might just stay there, You get them forming on floodplains as well, and delta areas, which is at the edge of the river, just before you get to the sea, like deltas, river, fluvial. There's different types of environments. There might be a desert over here, desert, where the wind's picking it up and forming it on dunes, sand dunes, which look a bit weird there. So there's different types of environments, and it's the same again when it comes to the ocean. Sand's going to settle out first, then your silt and your clays, like deep ocean environments, your silt and clays, and the same with lakes as well. Along the way, it'll be exactly the same. And you just get layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of these sediments accumulating over geological time. And that's the next step, accumulation of the sediments. Usually sedimentary rocks need somewhere to form, like a basin, like somewhere, a gap, like in the ground. Like it could be formed like where there's been extension of the crust, where you've had two plates moving away from each other. That usually creates space. It faults everything. It creates space for there to be, you know, a new formation of an ocean or a new kind of dip, like basin. And that's where you get the accumulation sometimes of these sediments, right? So, accumulation of the sediments is next. And then what happens after that is after the layer upon layer upon layer of the silt, it compacts and cements together, which is the next process in forming a sedimentary rock. And as that happens over geological time, eventually you get a siltstone. And eventually it can be brought back up to the surface if it's eroded away or that, you know, it just depends. So you get these siltstones forming in different environments, as I just said. You can get them carried by rivers, down by streams, like, you know, deposited on floodplains, like where the rivers went over the banks of the floodplain. And flooded into these floodplains. And then eventually once the like energy kind of stops like within the floodplains, like settles, and you just get silt, kind of siltstones forming, like, and it's very odd and strange. You get like siltstones forming in desert environments sometimes where the wind carries aeolian environments, very dry, like wind carries the silt particles and dumps them. It's probably what this one is here. This is actually probably a combination of like, it's a very fine sandstone, but it's got like beds of siltstone in it as well, because one side of it's very fine grained and the other side of it I can see is a sandstone, right? So like you get different environments that these rocks form in. Like I've got like one here which is a siltstone, but it's got plant material, which shows that this probably formed when there was a flood. And the flood was carrying quite a lot of debris, like a lot of plant material, like maybe a storm like happened back during, this would have been Carboniferous in age, right? I think it's from underneath Glasgow somewhere. Definitely Carboniferous, because this was a core. So, and the plant material and stuff in it's very randomly orientated. You can see there's like different plants and stuff, like just bits of tree and that have been carried down with the silt and the sand and the mud, and then dumped like maybe on a floodplain or whatever, or at the edge of a delta, like, you know, where there's been a storm and it's just kind of went, you know. So different environments. You can get it like forming in the sea, and you can get it forming in lakes, lacustrine like deposits as well. So there's different types of environments that siltstone form in. As I said before, sedimentary rocks to me are quite boring, but we need to talk about every single rock, and that's what Rock of the Week is. It's about trying to figure out and recognise rock types that you might see out in public and be like, wonder what that is, you know. And it is hard to differentiate. See, when you do have a fine-grained sedimentary rock, sometimes it can be very difficult to differentiate like between them, because sometimes the bedding like isn't very distinct. So you're like, is this a fine-grained sedimentary rock, or is it a fine-grained igneous rock? But you know, as we go along, we kind of pick up different like things, pick up different techniques. And I do like the fact that I sometimes use a microscope, a wee microscope thing, like that shows me like the grain sizes of them, and I'm like, yeah, I think that's a siltstone. Looks like a siltstone. So that's siltstone, that's Rock of the Week. Anyway, I want to talk about another thing that I do and I offer. So I basically have my own wee geology tour company, right? And I take people across Scotland, like to different places, right? Which range from one day trips to afternoon tours to evening tours to even weekend trips away. And this involves going to different places across Scotland. It might be your local area, it might not be, you know, and teaching people about the basics of geology and the basics of Scotland's geology. Because, you know, you get to learn a little bit about Scotland's geology as well as the geology of that area, but you also get to see the scenery and understand how the mountains have formed and why they are the shape that they are, like through erosion and weathering, or why different rocks erode differently. So I wanted to kind of move on and say, I've got my own wee geology tour company for those that don't know about that, like, because these videos that I'm doing are primarily for YouTube, to build up my YouTube following, my YouTube subscriptions, and hopefully I'll move on to making proper documentaries once the wee one's here. I'm going to start recording landscape rather than, well, I'll still record vertical for my other platforms, but I'll also record landscape so that I can produce documentaries for you guys to watch on different areas that I visit across Scotland. But that's Rock of the Week, and that's me done talking about Siltstone. Thanks for listening, and if you like this and you want to hear a little bit more about me, you can follow me, or subscribe to my page, Scottish Geologist. I'm known as Scottish Geologist across all social medias. I've got over 500,000 followers across all my other socials, and yeah, that's it really. Oh, pregnant as fuck. Got a hot water bottle shoved in my back.